Hello, everyone. It's a real privilege to be here to recognise your achievements and to celebrate with you today. And it's a real pleasure for me to be supporting Merchant Taylor's Girls' School, where I spent 7 very important years of my life. And I'm extremely pleased that Mrs. Robinson invited me to come and speak. I'm also a little overawed that Mrs. Davis is here, who was my headmistress. It's extraordinary to see you and a real pleasure. I have to say it's a bit of a surprise altogether to be stood here. I never ever thought that I would be somebody in this position. I wasn't a terrible student, but I certainly wasn't the best. I didn't ever receive a prize. And I spent a fair amount of my time stood outside the staff room, waiting for a teacher to give me a bit of a talking to about homework or talking in class, or nipping out of school to buy pasties, and the one that my mum always remembered, putting on nail varnish in a lesson. I mean, how disrespectful and stupid is that? But there you go. Anyway, as I waited outside that staff room, I would sit and look at this big print that we had of Picasso's Guernica. This is the painting that Picasso painted in 1937 in response to the absolutely atrocious bombing of a town in northern Spain by Nazi German and Italian fascist warplanes. It's an incredible, powerful painting, and on reflection, I think that it had an awful lot to do with sparking my interest in art. Another thing that happened while I was in the upper fifth, I think, was our music teacher, Miss Kitchen, inviting us all to bring in records, our favourite records to play. You probably don't even know what a record is, but you get the idea. And of course, we brought in David Bowie and Pink Floyd and all that kind of thing. And at some point in the process, Miss Kitchen said, "Can I play you my favourite record?" And we all went, "Oh yeah, okay, fine." And she played to us Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. It was the first time I had ever heard music like that. I was absolutely rooted to the spot. I don't know what anybody else thought, but for me, it began to open up a new world. I came from a family of engineers with no real interest in the arts. Well, actually, my 3 older brothers all are now interested in the arts, but they're all scientists. But my interest grew and grew. I used to bunk off from researching my geography A-level project in the Liverpool Museum and sneak to the Walker Art Gallery, where I would look at pictures and sculptures that opened so many things up for me. It seems ridiculous now that I hid that, but I didn't know anybody else who was interested, and it seemed fairly subversive. So in a way, I have my naughtiness to thank for a job that I love. What do I do? In the simplest terms, what I do is to make world-class exhibitions with artists. I build a collection. I care for a landscape that is 500 acres and was designed over 250 years ago. Why do I do it? What purpose could this serve? Well, I'm here to tell you that humans cannot live without art. As far back as the Ice Age, when you'd have thought that humans would be intent on only finding warmth or food, men and women have been carving ivory and stone, they've been forming ceramic, and they've been painting on the walls of caves. The Sulawesi cave paintings in Indonesia were made at least 40,000 years ago, and they are the earliest art that we know. What this tells us is that we are hardwired for creativity, that art isn't an option, but a human compulsion. The modern world has tended to divide us into scientists, artists, technicians. This is recent, extremely recent, foolhardy, and I think, frankly, absurd. There is so much out there for you to explore, and I implore you not to cut off any of it. As Picasso said, every child is an artist. The problem is staying an artist when you grow up. He didn't mean that literally everyone should be an artist, but that we need to keep hold of our inquisitiveness and our imagination. So as a curator and writer and advocate for culture, My work takes me around the world, raising money, creating projects, bringing what I believe to be the best of work to our museum in Yorkshire and elsewhere, and giving people opportunities to be creative and to fire their imagination. I've seen a lot of sculpture parks in my life, from the cliff tops of above Bondi Beach in Sydney, to Tasmania, New York, Denmark, South Africa, Patagonia, and Cuba. And I'm proud that I work in one of the very best. Actually, is the very best. I've been there for 26 years, and that's very unusual for someone of my generation. And it says a lot about this extraordinary combination of the natural world and sculpture. It's a place that I've given much of my life to. And believe me, there is no let-up. There is no day without some kind of work. But it's work that feeds my soul and also gives a tremendous amount to many other people, to our community and to our nation. Yorkshire Sculpture Park contributes £15 million a year to the local economy. Each year we receive 500,000 visitors, and we work with more than 45,000 people in our learning programme. Thousands of college and school students like you, but also women who've been trafficked, asylum seekers and refugees, people with dementia, young people in the criminal justice system, victims of domestic abuse and of extreme bullying, people who find themselves on the edge of society, frequently through no fault of their own. We aim to make a place that is welcoming, safe, and accessible, a place that gives pleasure and stimulation, a place that is full of wonder, and every day I see wonder happen. Mine has been a career path that is not clearly laid out, but one where I've let my passion lead me, and where I've taken advantage of offers and situations. Often those are really scary situations. A turning point for me some years ago was mediating a conference at the China Museum in Beijing, something I had never done. It was absolutely terrifying and gave a huge boost to me, my self-esteem, and to my career. I'm extremely tenacious in reaching out to all kinds of people. Much of my work is about having conversations, about making connections, about exchange. It seems amazing to me that Blundellsands Beach, where I spent so much of my teenage years, is now populated with sculptures by Anthony Gormley, who I've known for quite some time. And in fact, last week we had dinner together and I told him about this beach, and he was really delighted because he's very, very fond of the Crosby project. We spent our time together talking, exchanging, planning. Like all good artists, he is someone who never stops inquiring, who never stops seeking, who never ever rests on simply knowing. I remember my very first day at Merchant Taylors. I'd come from a school in Nottingham and I didn't know anybody. I felt very proud of my new school uniform, especially the straw boaters that we used to have. But as I looked around me, I couldn't believe I would ever be able to achieve what the older girls around me were doing. And in truth, that feeling persisted all the way through school. A fear of exams, of my lack of ability, of not being able to get into university, of not knowing what to do in the big world outside, of not believing I could actually function well in that world. Some of you might recognize those fears, but I want to assure you that no matter how much self-doubt you have, incrementally, little by little, so you don't know it, you are gaining in knowledge, in confidence, in ability. Your families, your friends, and especially this wonderful school are giving you the building blocks that will allow you to evolve and succeed, for you to become the best version of yourself. And let me also tell you that hardly anybody believes they're pretty or good at stuff or clever. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. Be true to yourself and just do the best that you can do. Sometimes everything will seem too much to fathom, but life takes you on a walk. And sometimes you take life on a walk, and that is like dancing on air. So now my imperative is to engage with people and to make good things happen. whether that's to do within the art world or with a wider social impact. I want to say something about teachers. It wasn't until my 2 daughters were in school that I really considered my own teaching. And when I realised what an incredible group of people, mostly women, they were at Merchants. They were women with talent, huge dedication, and real passion for their subjects. And for that expression of passion, I owe them a lot. And I can say with a deal of certainty that no matter how much you like or don't like your teachers, they are thinking about you pretty much every day of the week, that they care hugely that you fulfill your potential, and that they want to help you on that journey. It was my history teacher, Mrs. Parsons, who suggested I consider studying the history of art at university. I didn't even know it was a subject that existed. But her observation of me over a number of years, her care and her attention, her listening, and remember I was the girl looking at that Picasso print a lot, her thoughtfulness led me to a subject that I think is wonderful. Throughout my time in the 6th form, I was completely in love with a merchant's boy called Hugh England, and he was completely in love with me. Actually, everybody loved Hugh. And when he was in his 2nd week of his 1st term at Nottingham University studying medicine, and I was in my 2nd week at Manchester University studying the history of art, he had a car accident, and 2 weeks later he died. It felt like the end of the world. I closed up for quite a few years, but my friends and my academic work kept me going. What also kept me going was curiosity. I know that things can go wrong. I know the extraordinary pain of grief, and some of you may also know that. I know disappointment, I know humiliation, and you will too. But it's how we respond, how we live our lives that counts. And maintaining curiosity in the world is a huge liberation. I know some of you will be stressing about choosing your degrees, as is my youngest daughter, or thinking about what to do after A-levels. Try not to worry. When I was 17, I had no idea there was even such a thing as a museum industry. In fact, it's massive, global, and constantly growing, as last week's opening of the Louvre in Abu Dhabi shows us. For some, it's also a vastly wealthy world, as the sale of the Leonardo da Vinci for $430 million on Wednesday night testifies. I don't play down academic achievements or the importance of a CV, because these things really matter. But how you do things often matters more to your success than your specific job. To be given the gift of life is not to be taken for granted. It's worth thinking about how we want to be remembered, what we would want people to say about us at our funeral, our gifts and talents, our kindness, courage, and compassion. Caring about life, about the world around me, has got me an awful lot further than worrying about how I look, how I ought to look, how I ought to be, what people think of me. The world has plenty more brilliant people than me or you, and the world needs smart people, but the world also needs good people. People who stand up for justice, people who live and work with passion, commitment, and integrity. Whether that's in law, local government, medicine, social work, culture, business, sport, industry, or as a family member. Passion, commitment, and integrity. I'm with the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle when he said that living well is life's purpose. It's a big and wonderful world out there, and your generation is most likely to live into your 90s and into your hundreds, and you don't need to be fixed on one thing. Do not panic if you don't have a big dream or goal. Most people don't, but stay open to opportunity. Keep your curiosity, see the best in people, love yourself, embrace responsibility, and most importantly, give to something bigger than yourself. And remember that living well, being the best that you can be in whatever career or contribution you choose, is the very greatest success that you can enjoy. Thank you.